Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Alex Dworkin and I'm a managing partner at 4D Capital. We specialize in a very unique mathematical approach to the stock market where we analyze the market and individual stocks in three-dimensional space, and when we do, essentially perfect order emerges. On top of that, we've developed a number of very powerful timing indicators over the years, and when we combine both of them together, we can very often predict what the overall stock market or individual stocks will do going forward. And we can typically do it on multiple time frames. I personally believe our work is nearly identical to what Jim Simmons was able to accomplish at Renaissance Technologies, if you're familiar with Jim. So very quickly, our firm's goal is to essentially identify stocks that will 2x, 5x, 10x within a relatively short period of time. So we're looking for the next NVIDIA, Apple, Bitcoin, Tesla, and so on and so forth. And I guess the question is, who isn't, right? Well, we have a very special secret weapon that helps us identify such equities. We, over the years, developed a very powerful software around our mathematical approach of calculating the market in multidimensional space. And we can essentially scan, for example, the entire S&P 500. And what we're looking for very important mathematical bottoms that are coming up for stocks, right? We're not looking for, even though we have the ability to look for tops, we're not looking for tops because we're not necessarily interested on the short side of the trade, because as you know, it is a bit more risky and your gains are very limited. So we're looking for very important bottom for stocks, and our system is able to analyze, once again, for example, the entire S&P 500, identify those very clear bottoms, and then from those bottoms project what that stock is going to do going forward, once again in both time and price. So we are able to tell how far or how much further higher it's going to go after the bottom is put in place. And that's one of the reasons we're able to identify those 2x's, 5x's, 10x's. And I'll be talking about our next stock today that clearly illustrates it. So our the stock we're going to be looking at today, which is both one of our fast movers and super equities, is EMN, Eastman Chemical Company. According to our calculation, the bottom is coming up very soon. Once the bottom is put in place, Eastman is going to increase quite substantially from this set bottom and into this particular top. So those who are familiar with our mathematical explanation can skip forward probably 2 to 3 minutes. I'm going to, for those who are new to our analysis, I'm going to very quickly explain what you see here on the chart in terms of this triangles on top and the bottom and the lines here. So what you're seeing here is we call them cycle composites. Okay, so the bottom composites represent the bottoms and top composites represent the tops. Now, this very simple graphical representation of a very complex mathematical concept. So we basically scan the chart back in multidimensional space, we identify these composites, and we project them into the future. Now, what makes matters even more complicated is that there are typically multiple composites running in in any given stock or the overall stock market. So I always use Dow Jones as an example. There are 2 bottom composites and 2 top composites running on the Dow Jones. And if you put them together, you can actually replicate exactly what that particular chart is doing on a 2-dimensional time and price chart. Okay, so actually this one also has 2 composites on the bottom and 1 composite on the top, for example. So the secondary composite identifies these main cycle bottoms and then projects a little bit different cycles. So we have to take all of those things into consideration. We're just not displaying them here on the chart. So the bottoms or tops associated with these composites are a little bit more longer term in nature. They have a certain margin of error associated with them, depending on the length of the underlying cycle. So in this case, let's say plus or minus 2 months for these composites that you see in front of you. Now, the line you see on the chart is what we call cycle clusters. Okay, it is also a very simplistic representation of very complex mathematical concept. And basically, once again, we scan the chart back. You only see one. I just have to click a button here. You're gonna see multiples. I'm not gonna do it we have the software running in the background doing something, so I don't want to overwhelm it. But anyway, so these cycle clusters. Also, it's a very simplistic representation of a complex mathematical concept that we scan the chart back multidimensional spec, identify our proprietary cycles, and then project them into the future. And what we found over the years is that important turning points happen not when any particular cycle arrives at any given time, but when there's a multitude of cycles that arrive at the same time. So if we have 2, 5, 10, for example, cycles arriving on the same day, rest assured there's going to be a very important turning point there, especially if we're talking about longer term cycles. And as we narrow down the chart, for example, this is a long-term chart, but as we narrow down the chart to, let's say, weekly, daily, even intraday, we still working the same concept, but the cycle's a little bit different because cycles become short-term in nature, so we're looking at short-term cycles as opposed to long-term cycles. Okay, so hopefully all of that makes sense. Now, what does that tell us about EMN? So EMN is working itself into this major bottom associated with this mid-cycle bottom. As you can see, if we click on a cycle composite here, it ends up being on Christmas, December 24th, 2025, its projection, but as I mentioned before, it is plus or minus, let's say, 2 months. So we have a number of powerful cycle clusters that you don't see here, arriving at the end of October, then in middle of November, and then there's a bunch of them in December and then in January. So they kind of hit around this date. So the question becomes, which one is responsible for responsible for putting in the bottom? And from our perspective, it doesn't really matter because the price variable for this particular play remains the same. So let's look at a different composition of the same thing, which is our three-dimensional calculations. Now, I'm sure this doesn't make any sense to you, and that is perfectly fine. It makes perfect sense to us. You're just going to have to believe what I'm telling you. So our work essentially projects that we're going to see a bottom here, let's say $54 plus or minus, I'm sorry, $53 plus or minus $2 a share, and that's when the bottom is anticipated to arrive for this particular stock, EMN. Now, once that bottom arrives, I'm going to click here and I'm going to show you upper projection. So once this bottom arrives, we anticipate the stock to increase into that major cycle top that we saw on the previous chart. I'll go back there in a second and you're going to be able to see it. So we're going to be able to, and that's the beauty of our software. So behind the scenes, as we, for example, scan the entire S&P 500, our software is able to do all of these calculations. It is able to determine that this is going to be the bottom. It is able to project into that bottom our mathematical calculations, and from those mathematical calculations, it is able to project exactly where this stock is going to go after the bottom is hit. So actually, let me show you that so you can see. So we all we have to do is we have to unclick these particular mathematical calculations, and let me do this. And then we have to project from the two that will arrive next. So what the system is doing is projecting from this anticipated bottom, and these are the anticipated tops that it is projecting. So at the very least, according to our calculation, it's going to reach $160 a share. But if you've been following our work, you're familiar with what the forecasts I've been doing. This green region has a higher mathematical probability of being hit. So this one is 205. But whether it's 160 or 205, that's 200 to 300% gain. And that gain is achieved within a relatively short period of time. And of course, the margin of error associated with this bottom, according to our work, is very low, less than, let's say, 3 to 5%, I believe. So if, for example, the stock breaks below $50 a share, we know that our forecast has failed or our mathematical calculations has failed, and then we get out with a very small loss. At the same time, if everything works out as it should, and typically it does, then we know that once the bottom is put in place, then the stock is going to increase quite substantially into this particular top. So that's it for today. Hopefully you can, I forgot to mention the most important thing. So we have a 30-day free trial associated with our service. All you have to do is click on the link in the description of this video and request it. And in that 30-day free trial, no strings attached, no credit cards, none of that. But what you're going to be able to see, you're going to be able to see our exact time and price targets, not only with this stock, but with a multitude of other stocks. We follow the overall market. We have 52 mega cap stocks that we follow. They're big guys in the market, not only individual stocks, but currencies, commodities, etc. We have super equities. We have fast movers. So we have a treasure trove of information on our service. And if you are so inclined, I once again encourage you to take a look and decide for yourself if this is could be of help to you. Let's see what else. We just had a webinar, so we're not going to have another one for about 2 weeks. We do talk about the stock market at that juncture. We have a book coming up next week. I will let you know about it. And I think that's pretty much it. We'll be back with additional financial analysis over the next, next week, as a matter of fact. So have a wonderful day ahead, and have a wonderful weekend as well. It's Friday, I forgot. And I'll be back next week. Bye-bye.